The music played softly in the background, the clinking of champagne glasses filling the air as I entered the venue. It was a lavish engagement party in the heart of New York City, the kind of event where everything sparkled, except for my heart, which shattered the moment I saw him. Jake, my boyfriend, stood in the center of the room, down on one knee. A hush fell over the crowd as they watched in anticipation. But it wasn't me standing in front of him. It was my sister, Lily. I felt the room spin, my body frozen in place as I struggled to make sense of what I was seeing. My heart raced, confusion clouding my thoughts. How could he be proposing to her? To my sister? The betrayal was too much to comprehend. In that moment, everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and family shattered. Jake held Lily's hand, looking up at her with the same gaze he once reserved for me. My breath caught in my throat, anger rising in my chest. The people I trusted most had been deceiving me all along. My boyfriend, the man I thought I'd marry, and my own flesh and blood. They had been planning this behind my back, destroying my heart in front of everyone. I couldn't bear to watch it any longer. Without another thought, I stormed out of the party, tears welling in my eyes. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was the ultimate act of treachery. As I left, I vowed that neither of them would walk away unscathed. Before the betrayal, my life with Jake felt like something out of a dream. We lived in a picturesque suburban home in Westchester, New York, where everything seemed perfect. The house, with its neatly trimmed lawn and wraparound porch, was a symbol of the life we were building together. It was a life I thought was secure. Jake and I had been together for 3 years, and in that time, we'd talked about everything: our future, our dreams, our plans to one day start a family. He was my best friend, the person I trusted the most. We laughed often, spent weekends going on hikes, and made quiet dinners at home. I thought I had found my forever. In my mind, there was no question that this was the man I would spend the rest of my life with. My sister Lily was part of that life too. She had always been my closest confidant, the sister I could share anything with. I had trusted her as much as I trusted Jake. Lily was charming, kind, and effortlessly beautiful, qualities I admired but also envied at times. Still, I never let those feelings cloud our relationship. We had always been close, or so I thought. Looking back though, the signs of jealousy were always there, lurking beneath the surface. Lily had always been competitive, even when we were younger. Whether it was school grades, friendships, or sports, she always seemed to want what I had. But I ignored those moments, convincing myself that it was just normal sibling rivalry. After all, we loved each other, right? It wasn't until Jake's behavior started changing that I realized something was off. Subtle things at first. He started working late more often, making vague excuses when I asked where he'd been. His texts were shorter, more distant. He wasn't as present as he used to be, and I couldn't help but feel like something had shifted between us. When I asked him about it, he brushed me off, saying I was overthinking things. But the doubt gnawed at me. I tried to push it aside, to tell myself that every couple goes through rough patches. After all, Jake and I had built a life together. We were planning our future. I told myself that whatever was bothering him would pass, that we would get back to the way we were. Yet, deep down, I knew something had changed. One evening, as we sat in our living room, I asked him again, more directly this time, "Is something wrong? You've been so distant lately." He didn't look at me. "No, everything's fine," he said, his voice flat. But it wasn't fine. He had grown cold, emotionally pulling away in ways that left me confused and hurt. The man who had once been so affectionate, so open with me, was now a stranger sitting across from me on the same couch. There was a distance between us that I couldn't understand, and for the first time in our relationship, I felt a deep sense of insecurity. At first, I thought maybe it was work stress, something he just needed to work through on his own. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it, something he wasn't telling me. My mind began to spiral with worry, but I couldn't pinpoint what had gone wrong. I could never have imagined the truth that would soon unravel, how Jake wasn't just pulling away from me emotionally, but moving towards someone else, Someone I never saw as a threat, someone I trusted implicitly. That someone was my sister, Lily. It was a warm evening at our family home, and my parents had decided to host a small dinner party. As I sat at the table, surrounded by familiar faces, I couldn't help but notice the subtle tension between Lily and me. It was never spoken, never outright, but I could feel it. An undercurrent of competition, something unspoken that had always been there, quietly simmering. Tonight, though, something felt different. As we laughed and chatted around the table, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jake was paying more attention to Lily than usual. They exchanged glances across the table, shared inside jokes I didn't understand, and their interactions, though seemingly harmless, unsettled me. I tried to push the feeling aside, telling myself that I was overthinking it. After all, Lily was my sister. Jake loved me. There was no reason for me to feel threatened, right? I forced myself to smile and join the conversation, but my thoughts kept drifting back to the two of them. I began to notice how often Jake's eyes lingered on her, the way he laughed a little too hard at her jokes, how Lily seemed to always be in his line of sight. It was subtle, easy to miss if you weren't paying attention, but I was paying attention now, and I didn't like what I saw. Still, I told myself it was nothing. I was just imagining things. Jake loved me. We had a life together, plans for the future, and Lily was my sister. There was no way they would betray me like that. I had to trust them. I had to believe it was just in my head. But the more I watched, the more my doubts grew. As the evening wore on, I excused myself to go upstairs and grab my phone, leaving the two of them behind. I had only been gone for a moment when I heard voices coming from the hallway. At first, I didn't pay attention, assuming it was just casual conversation, but then I heard Lily's voice, low and conspiratorial. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her tone serious. "We have to be careful." I stopped in my tracks, my heart suddenly pounding in my chest. What were they talking about? "I'm sure," Jake's voice responded. "I've got everything planned out. We'll do it soon. She won't see it coming." My stomach dropped. I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing as I tried to listen. "I feel kind of bad," Lily murmured, her voice softer now. "But I can't wait." "I know," Jake said. "It's going to be perfect. Trust me." The blood rushed to my ears and I felt dizzy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were planning something, together, but what exactly? I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I already knew. It was about me. They were plotting behind my back, and the realization made my skin crawl. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, frozen, unsure of what to do next. Should I confront them, burst into the hallway and demand answers? Or should I stay silent, let it play out, and gather more evidence before making any decisions? Part of me wanted to rush in, scream, and demand to know the truth. But the other part of me felt paralyzed. What if I was wrong? What if this was all a misunderstanding? I couldn't accuse them without being sure, but how could I ever be sure? I took a deep breath, fighting back tears, and slowly backed away from the hallway, retreating upstairs without them noticing. My hands trembled as I gripped the banister, my mind racing. The two people I trusted most were betraying me right under my nose, and now I was trapped, unsure of what to do, unsure of how to confront the truth I didn't want to face. As I sat alone in my room that night, the weight of their betrayal settled in my chest like a stone. I couldn't ignore it any longer. Something was happening between Jake and Lily, and no matter how much it hurt, I would have to face it. But how? The days after I overheard Jake and Lily's conversation were some of the darkest of my life. I retreated to my apartment, isolating myself from the world, unable to process the betrayal. It was as if a switch had been flipped, and the life I thought I had built with Jake collapsed around me. The man I trusted, the one I planned my future with, had been deceiving me, and my own sister had been right by his side, twisting the knife. I spent hours staring out the window, replaying every moment in my head, trying to make sense of it. How long had this been going on? Had Lily always been the one he truly wanted? Was everything I thought we shared a lie? The questions haunted me, swirling endlessly through my mind. Every tender moment with Jake now felt tainted. The laughter we shared, the plans we made, all of it was poisoned by the knowledge that, behind my back, Jake had been falling for someone else. And not just anyone, my own sister. The thought of Lily was almost unbearable. She was supposed to be my confidant, my blood. We had grown up together, shared secrets, navigated the highs and lows of life side by side. I trusted her more than anyone, and yet, she had been quietly sabotaging my relationship, slipping into the role that should have been mine. A part of me wanted to scream, to lash out. The jealousy and anger bubbled up inside me, so intense that I could hardly breathe. I imagined confronting them both, making them feel the same pain they had inflicted on me. But what would that accomplish? Would humiliating them give me the closure I craved? I tried to hold on to the memories of my relationship with Jake, hoping to salvage some piece of it. But with every flashback, I wondered, did he ever really love me? Or had he always been drawn to Lily, waiting for the right moment to switch sides? It was a crushing thought, one that made me feel small and insignificant, as though I had never really mattered to him. I found myself scrolling through old pictures of us, trying to read between the lines of his smiles, the way he looked at me. Were there clues I had missed? Was his love for me ever real, or had I been blind to the truth all along? My apartment became my refuge and my prison. I avoided calls from my family, from friends. I didn't want to explain, didn't want to relive the pain by saying it out loud. I wasn't ready to face their pity or their advice. All I wanted was to figure out what my next move would be. Revenge crossed my mind more than once. I imagined showing up at the engagement party, exposing their lies in front of everyone. I pictured the looks on their faces, Jake's shock, Lily's shame. But would it be enough to make up for the betrayal I felt? There was also a part of me that considered walking away, disappearing from their lives forever, leaving them to deal with the wreckage of what they had done. Maybe I didn't need to confront them. Maybe the best revenge was my silence, my refusal to acknowledge the pain they caused. But I wasn't ready to disappear just yet. As the days passed, the anger in me slowly turned into something else. Determination. They had betrayed me, yes, but they hadn't broken me. I wasn't going to let them get away with what they'd done. I wasn't going to sit by while they built a life on the ruins of my heartbreak. I didn't know exactly what I would do next, but I knew one thing. They weren't going to win. Not like this. The cafe was buzzing with the usual chatter of New Yorkers, but I was lost in my thoughts. Across from me, Lena sat listening, her face a mix of shock and anger as I recounted what had happened. I had finally told her everything. About Jake, about Lily, and about the betrayal that had gutted me. "I can't believe they did this to you," Lena said, shaking her head. "Your own sister. And Jake? What are they thinking?" "I don't know," I admitted, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly. "It's like I was blind to all of it. I feel like such a fool." Lena reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're not a fool. They're the ones who did this. But what are you going to do now?" That was the question I hadn't been able to answer. Part of me wanted to disappear, to walk away from all of it. But another part of me, the stronger part, wanted to fight back. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they had done, to experience the humiliation and betrayal I had endured. "I need to confront them," I said, my voice steady. "But I don't want it to be some emotional breakdown. I want to do it in a way that shows them I'm not the victim here." Lena's eyes lit up. "You need to reclaim the narrative. Show them that they didn't break you. Do it in a way that makes them look like the fools." We sat in silence for a moment, both of us thinking. Then, an idea started to form in my mind, one that was bold, maybe a little reckless, but powerful. "I'm going to crash their engagement party," I said, a small smile forming on my lips. "But not just crash it, I'm going to show up in a wedding dress." Lena's eyes widened, then she burst out laughing. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," I replied. "They've been sneaking around, planning this behind my back. I'm going to walk in and remind them that I'm still here. They don't get to erase me that easily." Lena's smile grew as she leaned in closer. "That's brilliant. Imagine their faces when you show up like that, in front of everyone." The more we talked, the more the plan took shape. I wasn't just going to confront them, I was going to do it on my terms, in a way that turned the tables. Jake and Lily thought they had me beaten, but they had no idea what was coming. "We'll need to get the timing right," Lena said, her voice sharp with focus. "We have to know exactly when the proposal is going down." "I'll figure it out," I assured her. "And when the time is right, I'll walk in like I own the place." The rest of the cafe faded away as we plotted. I could feel a shift within me, a sense of control returning. I wasn't the same person who had been blindsided by betrayal. I was reclaiming my power, and it felt good. The next day, I went shopping. As I stepped into the bridal boutique, the reality of what I was doing hit me. But instead of feeling sadness or anger, I felt a surge of strength. This wasn't about Jake or Lily anymore. This was about me, about taking back control of my life. I ran my fingers over the rows of white fabric, scanning for the perfect dress. Finally, I found it. A sleek modern gown that radiated confidence. It was perfect. I walked out of the boutique with the dress in hand, my heart pounding with anticipation. Jake and Lily thought they had won, but they had no idea what was coming. This was my moment, and I was going to make sure they never forgot it. The elegant venue in Manhattan sparkled with chandeliers and soft lighting, but the moment I stepped through the doors, all eyes turned to me. I could feel the room go silent, the weight of 100 stares pressing down on me. But I didn't flinch. I walked in confidently, my white wedding dress flowing around me like a force field of defiance. Jake was standing at the front of the room, his arm around Lily's waist, laughing with some guests, completely unaware of what was coming. As I moved closer, the laughter died down, replaced by murmurs of confusion. I could see people whispering, wondering what I was doing in a wedding dress. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to be in this dress. But here I was. Jake's eyes found mine, and in an instant, his smile vanished. His face drained of color, and I saw the guilt wash over him like a wave. He froze, his body rigid as if time itself had stopped. Lily, standing beside him, looked at me, her face a mixture of shock and fear. She didn't know how to react. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before speaking. "Surprised to see me?" My voice was calm, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The room, which had already gone quiet, now felt as if it were holding its breath. Jake stammered, What are you doing here?" I walked closer, the fabric of my dress rustling in the silence. "Oh, I just thought I'd come to see the happy couple. After all, it's not every day that your boyfriend proposes to your sister behind your back, is it?" Gasps echoed around the room. Guests exchanged stunned glances, their shock mirrored in Jake and Lily's faces. They had no idea I knew. They had been playing this game for months, thinking I was oblivious. But now the truth was out. Lily took a step forward, her face pale. "It's not what you think." "Oh, really?" I cut her off, my voice sharper now. "So you didn't sneak around behind my back, planning this whole charade while I trusted you both?" I turned to Jake, my eyes narrowing. "You were supposed to be the man I spent the rest of my life with. You promised me everything. And now this?" Jake opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He was trapped, unable to defend himself, knowing that the truth was now out in the open. I could feel the tension in the room rise as I continued. "You think I didn't notice the late nights? The secret conversations? How you two suddenly became so close? I gave you everything, Jake. I trusted you, and you betrayed me." Jake finally found his voice, but it was weak. I'm sorry." I didn't mean for it to happen like this." "Didn't mean for what to happen, Jake?" I snapped. "To fall in love with my sister? Or to play me for a fool while you planned this behind my back?" Lily stepped forward again, her voice trembling. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it, Lily?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Were you jealous? Did you hate me so much that you had to steal the one person I thought I could trust?" Tears welled up in Lily's eyes, but I didn't care. I wasn't here to spare anyone's feelings, not anymore. "I trusted you both," I said, my voice softening just enough to show my pain. "But you made your choice, and now you have to live with it." The room was dead silent, all eyes on us. Jake and Lily stood there, exposed, unable to hide behind their lies any longer. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control. I wasn't the victim here anymore. I was the one calling the shots. With one last look at the two of them, I turned and walked out, my head held high, leaving behind the stunned guests, the betrayal, and the man I once loved. As I stepped into the cool Manhattan night, I felt lighter, freer. I had reclaimed my power, and there was no going back. The room was still buzzing with the shock of my arrival, but I felt nothing but clarity as I stood there, facing Jake and Lily. They had tried to hide their betrayal, but now it was laid bare for everyone to see. I expected Jake to stay silent, too ashamed to speak, but instead, he took a shaky step toward me. "Please wait," Jake stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Let me explain." I crossed my arms, keeping my expression cold and unreadable. This was the same man who had promised me forever, who had sworn his love for me, and yet, here he was, betraying me with my own sister. I had loved him once, deeply, but now all I saw was a man unworthy of my trust, a man who had chosen lies over loyalty. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," Jake continued, his voice cracking. "I was confused. I made a mistake." A mistake? That's what he was calling it? His betrayal, his lies, his willingness to tear apart my family? Anger flared inside me, but I kept my composure. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. "I was scared," Jake said, desperation creeping into his voice. "I didn't know what to do. I never meant to hurt you." I shook my head, feeling a strange sense of detachment. "You didn't just hurt me, Jake. You destroyed everything we built together, and for what?" Jake's eyes were wide, pleading. "I still love you," he said, his voice trembling. "I never stopped. Please, give me another chance." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. He looked so pathetic standing there, begging for forgiveness, for a second chance that he didn't deserve. But that moment passed quickly, replaced by a sense of clarity. I didn't need Jake's love anymore. I didn't need his apologies or his guilt. I had survived his betrayal, and now I was stronger than I had ever been. "I don't want your love," I said firmly. "I wanted your honesty, your loyalty, and you couldn't give me that." Jake's shoulders slumped, his face pale. He knew it was too late. He had gambled everything, and he had lost. "I'm sorry," he whispered, but the words fell flat. I stood tall, feeling the power in my own voice. Sorry isn't enough. Behind Jake, I caught a glimpse of Lily, standing frozen in place, watching the scene unfold. She had been part of this too. She had chosen to betray me as well. But unlike Jake, she stayed silent, knowing that nothing she could say would undo what she had done. With one final glance at both of them, I turned and walked toward the door. The murmurs of the guests faded into the background, their shock no longer my concern. This was my moment of freedom, my chance to leave behind the pain they had caused. I walked out of the venue, my head held high, ready to embrace whatever came next. I had reclaimed my power, and now I was free. The rooftop terrace was quiet, the bustling sounds of New York City fading into the background as I stood there, gazing out at the skyline. The cool evening breeze rustled my wedding dress, and for the first time, I didn't feel the weight of it. It no longer symbolized pain or betrayal. It was now a symbol of my strength. I had faced Jake and Lily, confronted the lies they had built behind my back. I had exposed their betrayal for all to see, and while it didn't erase the hurt, it gave me a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. I wasn't walking away as a victim. I was walking away on my own terms, stronger and more empowered than I had ever been. The pain was still fresh, the scars of their betrayal still lingering in my heart, but I could feel it now, a shift. The power they once held over me was gone. I was no longer haunted by their actions, no longer consumed by the anger or jealousy that had threatened to tear me apart. I had reclaimed my life. As I leaned against the railing, watching the city lights flicker below, I thought about everything that had brought me to this point. The love I had once felt for Jake, the trust I had placed in Lily, it had all been shattered. But from those broken pieces, I had rebuilt something stronger, myself. For so long, I had defined my life by the relationships I had, by the people I trusted, by the love I gave. But now, I realized that my worth wasn't tied to anyone else. I didn't need Jake's love or Lily's approval to feel whole. I was enough, just as I was. I took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill my lungs. The future stretched out before me, uncertain but full of possibility. I didn't know what was next, but I knew one thing for sure. I would never again let someone else dictate my happiness. I had walked into that engagement party thinking I needed to confront Jake and Lily to find closure. But the truth was, the closure I needed had been inside me all along. Confronting them wasn't about revenge. It was about freeing myself from the past, and I had done that. I glanced down at the dress I was wearing. It had once represented everything I thought I had lost: love, commitment, a future I thought was certain. But now it felt like something entirely new. It wasn't a symbol of broken dreams anymore. It was a reminder of my strength, of how far I had come. With one final look at the skyline, I turned away from the railing. The party venue behind me was filled with whispers and stares, but I didn't care. I was no longer a part of that world. I was moving on, embracing a future that belonged to me, and me alone. As I walked away from the terrace, the wind caught the fabric of my dress, making it billow around me. I smiled to myself, knowing that this was the last time I would ever wear it, not as a bride, but as a woman who had found her own power, her own independence. And with that, I stepped into the night, ready to embrace whatever came next.